tough question to start. Are you a coffee drinker?
I'm a hardcore coffee drinker.
Hardcore coffee drinker. What is your coffee rituals and routines?
Well, my coffee ritual isn't anything fancy, but every morning, the first thing I do when I wake up is make a hot cup of coffee, and I'll probably have several throughout the day. Coffee is my lifeblood.
Do you need to stop drinking coffee at some point in the day to be able to sleep at night?
No, it has almost no effect on me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. You've traveled all around the world. Where is the best coffee to be found?
Italy,
Italy?
for sure. Mm-hmm.
All right. very good.
Cappuccino, nothing like
Cappuccino.
it.
What about favorite food?
My favorite food is probably something that my mom makes, something from our childhood. Maybe she used to make these potato tacos, and it sounds simple, but there's just something nostalgic about it. And that has to be my favorite food.
What about favorite band or music?
I listen to a lot of Christian music, and my favorite artist right now is Brandon Lake. He's awesome.
Favorite song
Favorite song
of Brandon Lake?
of Brandon Lake. Right now I'm listening to Lion by him in
Okay.
Elevation Worship.
And what about favorite movie?
My favorite movie is Signs by M. Night Shyamalan. Do you know that one?
I do not know that one.
It's a
This
good
is
one.
the first time.
It's a good one.
What's it about?
It's about an alien takeover, but the purpose of the movie is, or the underlying storyline is that everything that happens for a reason. And it all plays in at the end. And that's how eventually they end up, I guess, winning the takeover.
And is that why it's your favorite movie?
It is.
And is that working out in your life?
It is, yeah.
Things happening for a reason?
I think of that theme often, that even the bad, the good, the ugly, all of it has a purpose that God will use.
Tell us about your childhood. What was it like growing up? What are your memories of childhood?
I had a very fun childhood. I'm one of 6 children, so I have 4 sisters and 1 brother, and we're all very close to this day. But my childhood, we lived on a cul-de-sac at the top of a hill, and at the bottom of the hill was a Catholic church. So some of my favorite memories are my mom and dad walking us down to Mass on Sundays, and just hanging out with the family. Still my favorite thing to do this day is just hang out with my brothers and sisters.
And that was California?
Yes, California, Orange County.
Were you a sports person? Did you like playing sport growing up?
I played a lot of sports, but I don't know if I am a sports person.
What sports did you play?
I played tennis. I did baseball. I was actually a total tomboy growing up, if you can believe it or not. I wanted to be just like my brother because he was older than me. So I played on the boys' baseball team. I was the only girl, and I was horrible. But I also did horseback riding and swimming, and yeah, I was involved in a lot of sports. Basketball.
Do you like watching sport?
In person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like going to a game, getting a Dodger dog if you're from California.
So baseball would be the game you would most like to attend?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're a Dodgers fan?
Yes.
Now, what is the difference between a Dodgers fan and other California baseball fans?
Like Dodgers versus Angels or something?
Yeah.
Dodger fans are better.
Dodger fans are better.
Depends who you ask.
Interesting. Who is the most interesting person you've ever met?
Most interesting person I've ever met. I've met so many interesting people, but I think the most interesting person that I've ever met was this young girl named Serena. She was a survivor of Christian persecution in Iraq, and she was really, her story was the first story that radically changed my life. So if I can give you a little snippet.
Give it.
So she was living in Iraq during ISIS, and ISIS or Islamist militants came into her home, kidnapped her sister, and killed the brother in front of the family. And they threatened the family that they were going to come back and kidnap Serena if they didn't leave or convert. So ISIS left the family that night with the option, convert or be killed. So her family fled Iraq with nothing but their passports in their hand. And they were living in Jordan. And the reason why this is so interesting to me is because I couldn't believe that this girl, only 19 years old, had chose Jesus over everything. And when I spoke to her, she still had hope, despite that she had lost everything and suffered so much. And that resonated with me so deeply. And I think about her story often.
Now, this was your first trip to Egypt when you met her?
No. So I met her in Jordan in 2018.
Okay.
And this was my first experience with the Iraqi and Syrian refugees.
Wow.
So I had traveled for the first time to the Middle East when I was 12 years old. And even at 12 years old, I visited Egypt with my grandmother. I remember how touched I was by the faith of the Egyptian Christians. But I returned to Egypt as an adult for the first time when I was 20. And being surrounded by the faith of the persecuted church, hearing their stories, changed my life forever. And then through the years, had the opportunity to continue to go back and visit the persecuted church throughout the Middle East.
Wow. So you come back from that trip. What's happening in your mind? What are you thinking? What's on your heart? What does that look like?
The story that leads up to me visiting Egypt for the first time, if I can share with you, I was working what I thought was my dream job at the time. I had everything that I could have wanted from the outside looking in. But on the inside, I felt really empty. And I felt like when I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize the person looking back at me. So eventually, it got to the place where I didn't like the person looking back at me. And so I said a simple prayer. I said, Lord, I know anyone who is in you is a new creation, and I want that new creation life. And within the course of maybe a week, God turned my life upside down, but it was for the better. It's kind of amazing what happens when we give God permission to turn our lives upside down. And I called my grandmother and I said, Grandma, do you have any trips coming up? Because she has run a nonprofit organization that focuses on international crisis relief for over 40 years, and she's always traveling somewhere. So in my mind, I was just going to go on a retreat, get out of town, and figure out what my next step was going to be. And she said, yes, we're going to Egypt, and you're welcome to come. So 2 weeks later, I was in Egypt and surrounded by people for the first time in my adult life that I realized people are being persecuted for their faith. That Christian persecution is not just something of the past that happened in the early church, but is happening now today. And that there are Christians, young people, my age and even younger, who are willing to die for their faith. And that resonated with me so deeply. So while I was in Egypt, surrounded by these young people so on fire, I made the decision, Lord, I never want to live another day of my life not totally in service for you. So I came back to the United States, radically changed, and I told my mom I had a moment with the Lord in Egypt, and I gave my life to Jesus again, and it was never the same after that.
So you're sitting on the plane coming back.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
Thinking I need to stop talking to a lot of the friends that I was hanging out with. And, really, truthfully, I was thinking how grateful I was for that experience, because not everybody has an opportunity to travel at the drop of a hat and get out of your comfort zone and experience people who were suffering and hear their stories. So the first thing that I was thinking, that I was grateful to God for answering my prayer in such a short time frame. And I was thinking about all the things that I needed to change about myself short term in order to align myself with Christ. Although I didn't know what he was going to do, I had no idea what my life looked like. I wasn't sure what my next step was going to be, but I knew that I had to make some changes.
You mentioned friends. I think one of the things that prevents conversion from taking root in people's lives is that their friends are not supportive of the changes that they're making.
Yeah.
Did you lose friends?
I lost all my friends except for one. I have one friend that I've had since high school, and she's amazing. She's my best friend to this day. But yeah, it was painful. I lost all of my friends. And actually, I started an Instagram page too, because I was so excited about the transformation that happened to me. And I wanted to share how exciting it is to follow Jesus and the truth of the gospel. So I started an Instagram page. And one of my closest friends actually made a fake Instagram page to mock me. So that was really painful. But I'm thankful for my mom, because she was really the closest friend that I had at the time. And we started praying the rosary together and going to mass. And I got so close to Jesus during that time where I felt so isolated.